What was the worst experience you've had during Halloween? Was trick-or-treating with 3 buddies freshman year of high school. We were joking about being a little old to do it, but it was all in good fun. Some kids 2 years older were running around in skull masks doing rowdy teenager stuff and decided it would be a good idea to take my candy. They were much larger than us and had no trouble. One grabbed my bag and another one grabbed me and threw me down in the street. No serious injuries, but I had skinned knees and palms. I was pissed. Filed a police report and the officers took it seriously. We got out a yearbook and identified 3 of them and they were picked up that night. They were charged with strong arms robbery as juveniles and got a ton of community service and had to pay for my mom's lost pillowcase plus candy plus damaged clothing. I caught some flack for it at school from their girlfriends. They were ordered not to talk to me, but didn't really care because I felt like justice was served. A woman telling me I'm too old to go trick or treat. My friends telling me they weren't doing anything, only to all hang out all evening while I stayed home alone. Teen years can suck. Edit. I must clarify this was like 15 years ago. Thankfully I have some great friends now. My mom was pretty strict with how much candy I was allowed to eat on Halloween. One year, after some annoying begging, I finally got my mom to say eat as much as you want. Spent about an hour barfing up peanut butter cups and warheads. I was walking home with my friend when I was like 9 and a car of high school kids or around that age stole all our candy. 3 hours of work, gone. I was like 7 or 8 and dressed like an angel. Parents took me to the science museum where they set up little houses for the kids to trick or treat in. I got so much candy and was so proud of myself. But when we left, all my candy was gone. The little boy behind me had been taking scoops of my candy and putting it in his basket. I cried. I was going out with a girl back in high school whose birthday fell on Halloween. Her brothers absolutely hated my guts for no reason whatsoever. I wasn't a troublemaker. Didn't do things I wasn't supposed to, and tried really hard to get on good terms with them. Anyway, she threw a birthday party for herself at her older brother's basement. I showed up with a couple friends and while the party was pretty lame, I was there for her. When I went to give her the gift I had wrapped, her older brother grabs me by the collar and shoves me outside on the concrete steps. I asked him what his problem was. He told me to get the hell out of his house. His sister tries to get him to stop and tells me it's okay to go back inside the house. Her other brothers then showed up shortly after and swell. I got my ass handed to me. I ended up just leaving the party with a black eye and a bruised up face. I lied to my parents that I picked a fight with someone and lost. We broke up shortly after. My mom's funeral happened to fall on Halloween. Halloween 2014. My dad died. He had cancer and I had a flight out November 1st to say goodbye. Got a call early on Halloween morning telling me to get on a plane. ASAP. During my layover I got the call he had passed. Holiday still kinda sucks for me. This happened to my friend who is not on Reddit. It's Halloween night and there's a knock on her parents' door. Dad goes to open it and there is a man with a bag on his head standing on their porch. Silent. The man makes a move to step into their house and dad pushes him backwards. Everyone watches as the man falls backwards off of their step and smashes his head on the ground. It is revealed that the man with the bag is my friend's grandfather, mom's dad, who was trying to Halloween prank them. He was rushed to the hospital with permanent damage, no longer able to care for himself or his wife who had health issues as well. They both ended up in convalescent care. Additionally, my friend's mother never forgave her husband, placing the blame of the accident entirely on his shoulders. They divorced shortly after. Not being able to celebrate Halloween as a kid and watching all my friends go trick-or-treating from my window. Had the stomach flu one year on Halloween. I was a month shy of turning 11. My parents took my younger siblings out trick-or-treating and I was stuck alone in the house blowing chunks out of both ends. Getting so excited with all the candy I had and puking into the bucket of candy. My mom took away all my candy to give to the later kids. I grew up in northern Canada and when I was probably 5 or 6, I got me a Darth Vader costume. One of those vinyl costume and capes with a lightsaber and thin plastic mask. I thought I was so cool back then. Well, Being northern Canada, it was exceptionally cold that year, like below -30°C. I went out that evening bundled up and ready to show off my cool outfit, but it was so cold, the costume just cracked and disintegrated as I went around the block. Due to the weather, I barely got around the block, but by the time I was home, I just had the lightsaber and mask. The rest of the costume just fell apart in pieces as I moved. Not worst but best, I'm Australian. Halloween isn't really a thing here, but we still get some kids coming to our door at that time of the year. One time my mum had no lollies, candy, to give, so she just gave the little girl a can of soup we had in the cupboard. That girl was thrilled with the can of minestrone she got. She screamed to her parents, "I got soup." Wholesome. Brother died 2 years ago. He had battled cancer for a while. The great pumpkin took him home. Junior year of high school, my cousin and I volunteered to drive some of the younger kids from church and chaperone their trick-or-treating. We were walking down the street, back toward my truck, when I hear a sound that was familiar but didn't click at first. I hear it again and feel something whiz past me and hit the concrete. I realized it was someone with a pellet gun. About the time one of the little girls screamed this blood-curdling wail and fell down. He had shot her in the eye with a CO2-powered pellet gun. My cousin took off running toward a yard, leaned down and grabbed a hunk of gravel concrete from the driveway and chunked it into the tree. He had a 92-mile-per-hour fastball and hit the kid, knocking him from a limb and onto the ground. I'm wrangling 7 kids, from 6-12 years old, all screaming and crying while my cousin is beating the boogers out of this guy's sinus cavity. Parents are running outside, and it's chaos when the police and ambulance finally show up. Long story short, kid with the pellet gun got an assault with a deadly weapon and another charge. The little girl, 8 years old, lost her eye from the incident. Getting tear gassed on Polk Street in San Francisco, mid-1970s. Evening. Everyone is milling around in crazy Halloween costumes. Lots of fun. Very chill. Until some asshole chucks a tear gas canister into the crowd. Pure chaos ensued, and my throat was sore for 24 hours. I had costume plans with a friend who chickened out on me and wanted instead to wear her own regular clothes while I was in a ridiculous Ginger Spice costume and pass her clothes off as 80s. Definitely wasn't influenced by her snotty roommate who called me immature for what I wore or anything. I had her drop me off after that and decided to find other plans. Decided to try to hang out with some of my other friends, who were male, but a girl who didn't like me and let them use her for rides. Considering none of them were interested in her, refused to pick me up and let me hang out with them. I didn't have a car at the time, so I decided I was going to walk there. About a 7-mile walk. Got a quarter of a mile down the street, tried to cross and got hit by a car. 13 years later I still have the metal in my ankle. I was 14 and I went out with my group of friends and I was always the one left out. They dressed in girly costumes and I was a full-on clown with big shoes. I walked with the girls' moms the entire time because they were ahead and the big shoes slowed me down. They went into a haunted house and I was too scared, so I waited outside, and then I couldn't sleep over because I was really allergic to my friend's cat. I did find a $20 bill on the floor though. Skinned my leg on someone's driveway and covered it with blood. Then waited a few hours for a ride to come that didn't come when it was also cold and a police officer brought us home. My dad got fired on Halloween once out of nowhere when I was 10. No explanation or anything. So we had to move the next week for him to try to find a new job. Also, I got sick a couple Halloweens. I was in the 5th grade and went going to trick or treat. I got this pain in my lower stomach, so my mom took me back home. After what my mom saw in the bathroom, we figured out I started my period for the very first time. I had to wear a dress for school all the time. This one was below my knees, and when I was running, my feet got caught in the dress. I fell and skinned my knee and my legs. Went trick-or-treating anyway because the blood made my costume look more real. It was freezing out and I was shivering. Fell again and hurt my hands. But since it was so cold, it hurt even worse. While I was dealing with that, my friends wanted me to go to the neighborhood across the road. I said no, and said that I was hurting too much. One of the kids I was with said that I was a goody goody because my parents wouldn't let me go and I was lying to them about being in pain. He stole my candy, and I went home bloody and empty-handed. When I was around 11/12 I went out trick-or-treating with a friend. Ran into some older kids my friend wanted to hang out with, so we tagged along. They wanted to go pumpkin smashing. I was a rule follower and didn't want to be around trouble, but I let my friend talk me into it. We come to a house that had a bunch of great pumpkins. You could tell they spent a bunch of time on them. There was a candy bowl with a note, so the kids start destroying the pumpkins. I just watched, feeling uncomfortable. Couple days later I'm reading the paper and see a letter to the editor from the owners of house. They listed the address. It said how awful it was and how it wrecked their kids who spent so much time on the pumpkins. I felt sick. I showed my friend and he thought it was cool and took it to show those other kids. I realized then our association was more about living on same street than friendship. I still feel terrible. In my 20s one of my friends would have a giant shindig every year. My ex and I went 3 years in a row, and each year he became more and more of a sloppy mess. The first year wasn't too bad, but the second one he ended rolling around in the grass in the backyard making a fool of himself. But the third year, we showed up a couple of hours early to help our friend set up. But as soon as we got there my ex decided to take one of those giant yard cups that people carry around in Vegas and made himself an enormous Long Island iced tea. He drank that thing down in 15 minutes tops. He started to get sick right as people started to show up. He spent the whole night sitting on the back porch vomiting like he was starring in the remake of The Exorcist. And for some reason his friends thought I should have been sitting with him rubbing his back or something. Duck that. He put himself in that position. He could live with the consequences. It was always his friends who encouraged him to drink like that. So I left him with them and went home. We broke up after that. I don't care if people drink. But what I can't stand is a sloppy drunk that knows they're pushing their limits and keeps going anyway. Edit. Typo. Being in the hospital 2 years straight for Halloween and thinking of all my friends trick-or-treating while I couldn't. This year will be my first time trick-or-treating in 2 years and I'm hella pumped. Went to a small Halloween get-together. Me, my wife, and a few friends, and had a great time playing games and drinking. My wife even got fairly drunk, which is really unusual for her. We go home around midnight, Uber, we're responsible, and get ready for bed. My wife starts having some abdominal pain, but we don't think anything of it. It's getting close to that time of the month. Nothing really unexpected. Fast forward an hour later, and she's writhing on the bed in the worst pain of her life. I rush her to the ER, and the staff there take her into a room and start doing their thing. Asking questions, drawing blood, etc. One of them take me out into the hallway and give me the worst news I've ever had. There's a chance that it could be serious. Maybe ovarian cysts or some kind of aggressive cancer, and her life could very likely be in danger. Holy it. I go back in the room and try to keep a strong face on for her sake. She hasn't heard any of this, and they've barely started drawing blood to run tests. Then, suddenly, her pain evaporates. Gone. She looked up at a nurse and asked if she had been given any drugs, and was told no. All they've done so far is draw blood. Turns out it was a kidney stone. A ducking stone. I had the ever-loving it scared out of me over a little tiny stone. 4 mm. As it turned out. Granted, I'm sure it hurt like absolute hell. But even 10 years later I'm furious that that person had that conversation with me before they even ran any tests. Jesus Christ. I thought I was going to lose her. Yeah. We've never gone back to that hospital. Someone threw a raw egg at my friends and I from a passing pickup and it exploded against the back of my hand. Such pain. Having people that annoy me at school find my house and attempting to get in. I got ditched by people who I thought were my friends in high school while we were trick-or-treating being teenagers. I had to walk 1.5 miles home by myself. Sucks, man. A few years ago on the 29th of October, I had an operation on my shoulder, which was closed with 12 staples. On Halloween 2 days later, my young daughter wanted to go trick-or-treating, high on prescription painkillers. I thought it was a great idea to take her, with my arm in a sling. We went trick-or-treating and I ended up racing her from house to house. between two houses. I slipped and fell directly on my arm in the sling. It's ooh-key. One Halloween, I went downtown to apply for a job at Barnes & Noble's. All of my friends were away at college, along with my girlfriend at the time. So after I applied to the job, I didn't have much to do. I was also feeling kind of down because things had gotten pretty rocky in our relationship when she left for school. So I decided to walk. I live in Chicago, so I ended up by Lakeshore Drive and just started walking down the trails, listening to music and looking at the lake and the people. It started getting dark, and I had already walked a pretty good distance, but I didn't feel like stopping. I ended up walking from downtown all the way to Belmont Harbor, which is pretty far. That harbor was very close to where my girlfriend lived, so she and I would often go there around this time and watch the water. I sat there for about an hour, watching the waves and smoking cigarettes, before deciding I should get going back home. I could have walked over to the train I would take to her house, but I decided to walk back the way I came. So, I walked all the way back downtown and got on my train home. I had taken time off after graduating high school, so I was used to my friends not being there all the time. But that was the first night I actually felt alone. When I was around 12 I was pretty much full grown and multiple people told me I was too old to trick or treat and some refused to give me candy. So when I was 13 I went to a party and got hammered instead. My girlfriend asked me to go with her and her son trick or treating. We picked out costumes for everyone, invited the neighbor kids and went around for about 4 hours. We took tons of pictures of us and the kids and a kitten followed us back to her house that we ended up keeping. We dropped off the kids with their parents then went home and got the kiddo ready for school the next day while trying to keep him from eating too much candy. Next day at work our mutual friend asked what I did for Halloween. I told her to check the girlfriend's Facebook cause she posts everything and I wanted her to see the kitten pics. Yeah, I'm cropped out of every picture. All people we visited, all the other kids' parents and a few of the neighbors we stopped and talked to are tagged in her post about how much fun her and her son had. Felt like I was cut out of her public life. Edited to add last line since I feel like it's minor after reading some of these. When I was 12 my mom didn't allow me to go out trick or treating because I would be kidnapped, robbed, killed and raped. I was also never allowed to wear costumes because it was inappropriate. I was 12 and a man yelled at me and told me I was too old to be out trick or treating. I felt so bad I gave all my candy to my little brother and just walked with him for next hour or so. When I got home my mom asked me why I didn't have any candy so I told her what happened. She asked me who said that to me and I told her which house. I don't know if she ever did anything about it, but since I've become an adult and bought my own home, I don't care if you're 90 years old, you're getting candy. Halloween is for everyone. It's a tie, but for very different reasons. The first was in middle school, age 11 or 12, while trick-or-treating with friends. Some jerks threw eggs at us out a car window, hitting one friend and splattering raw egg on at least one other. And while we were recovering from that some older bigger kid stole another friend's bag, pillowcase, of candy. It was not very fun. The other worst Halloween was with my abusive ex. He was invited to a costume party by work friends and told everyone went all out for it. So he decided that we would go as a fairy pimp and fairy hoe. Basically a pimp and whore with wings. He decided that I had to dress super slutty, getting me clothing from a Six shop for me and some cheap pre-made pimp outfit for him. My costume cost over $100 and we did not have that type of money to spend. We go to the party, him looking like it and me looking like a little streetwalker. Something I've never been comfortable with and he knew that. I was overdressed as duck. Technically underdressed, as I was basically in panties and a bra, meeting these people for the first time, in October in WI, USA. It was cold, embarrassing, and a waste of money. I had a bad night, felt completely objectified, in a bad way but my ex loved having the sexiest girl at the party at his side, even though he largely ignored me, unless I started talking to someone other than him. That was interrupted right quick as he had to be not just my main focus, but my only focus. I was 24ish around this time and it took over a decade, and ditching the less useful than an arsehole of a BF, for me to enjoy costumes again. Got made fun of and bullied for wearing a full costume when I was 13. Cried and wanted to go home by like 5 PM. There was one true friend who waited with me at a park until my parents came to pick me up. My dad was pranking trick-or-treaters by spraying them with a water gun from a window as I gave out sweets. The same guy who my dad pissed off followed me and my friends around the neighborhood with a scary mask on to get revenge. When we went out trick-or-treating. So creepy. Choked on a gobstopper. Heimlich got it out of my trachea but it then got stuck in my esophagus and I got it down with some bread. My throat hurt for days. My parents called an ambulance but we got it resolved before they came. Super scary. I have 2 young kids now that have been getting gobstoppers jawbreakers on Halloween since they were 2. I always take them out and throw them away. My grandpa died on Halloween morning when I was 12. And then my dog of 13 years died on Halloween night last year. I still love Halloween but it is a very hard night for me. So this isn't terrible. Just funny and a little embarrassing. Went to Halloween Haunt at King's Dominion in 2016. My inquisitive girlfriend looked inside the window of this obvious painted facade that looked like a wagon. Inside was really a dressing room trailer for the costumed people paid to go around scaring guests. I'm already like, come on, let's get out of here. Then a clown appears, standing next to us like he was there the whole time. Hey, she's peeping. He squeaks, with red nose and everything. Hey, everyone, she's a peeper. He shouts to guests passing by. He's pointing at her with his goofily large glove. I grabbed her and we ran and that was the time we almost got cancelled by zombie clowns. My son was born via emergency C-section. Worst Halloween prank ever. I was taking my then 2-year-old out for his first time. He's 15 now. And I was 41 weeks pregnant with my second child. Single mom. Dad isn't and never has been around for my son so it was up to me to take him. I went into labor and my water broke after 45 minutes of walking around our neighborhood. When I got to the hospital, because I'm diabetic, they had to draw blood to run some tests. The nurse left the empty collection vials across the room. So when she finished with the first vial, she had to cross the room to get the next one. She didn't clamp the IV tube when she took the first vial off. So when she walked away, there was a literal fountain of blood spraying out of my arm. I started laughing hysterically. She turned around, started laughing herself, and said, "Well, happy Halloween, I guess." It was awesome. My parents are preachers and Halloween fell on a Sunday one year. The place where we lived, it was custom to have 2 services on Sundays and, despite being 12 and the church being a mere 30 feet from the house, I wasn't allowed to go trick-or-treating. My dad insisted on dragging me out Saturday night. It was embarrassing to knock on doors and see the confused faces of the occupants. They weren't expecting any trick-or-treaters the day before Halloween. I finally put up a fight and refused to go to any more houses after one guy, who went to my parents' church, laughed in my face and told me to leave. Me and my cousin fought over the last Snicker bar, and I don't even like Snickers : Went with some friends downtown Halloween night. Big mistake. People flooded the streets in the thousands. I've never been in such a huge crowd of people before. Couldn't get a drink anywhere. People were drunk, nasty, pushing, shoving. You'd randomly encounter the full spectrum of human emotions from the jubilant to the angry to a small group of girls crying over being ditched by their BFS and the smell of BO. Weed and piss filled the air. I tolerated it for a couple hours but I had reached my limit. I walked away from the crowds, called for an Uber and hit the bricks. I lost my brakes in my car and crashed it on Halloween. Went through the windshield and had 500 stitches to put my head back together again. I'm fine now but that definitely sucked. Cop came to my house accusing my friends and I of handing out anthrax lace candy. This was in 2001 or 2002 during a news-induced anthrax panic. Obviously 3 suburban 15-year-olds did not have access to anthrax. My older brother escaped from a mental institution on Halloween when I was 12 years old. Later that day he hijacked a car and drove it back to our town. I was babysitting a couple of kids a few blocks away when we all heard screaming and saw kids running for their lives. He was eventually shot by the local sheriff and he was returned to the same institution. Crazy thing was, this happened 4 more times over the span of 32 years. Worst Halloween ever. My church held a small Halloween festival and I won a small pack of cookies from a game, and when I was showing some other kids my prizes as you do after trick or treating, a fat kid stole my cookies and bolted and I never got them back. I didn't chase after him because I was caught completely off guard and took me a moment to realize what just happened. Lady said if you can shave your armpits, you're too old to trick or treat. I was in 7th grade and had just hit puberty. Thanks lady, much appreciated. When I was a child I had a Barney-ish costume. It was a homemade hand-me-down dinosaur that was the right color palette to be Barney. The main costume was the body, and there was a headpiece of the dino head that went on top of my head. When I looked in the mirror, with the dino head, its friendly felt teeth, and then my face below that, all I could see was that it looked like Barney was eating me alive. And I was not having it. I threw a tantrum and refused to wear the head. So if you lived in Pennsylvania in the late 90s and had a half girl half knockoff Barney show up at your door, now you know why. My appendix burst the Halloween I was 12 and I had to have surgery. I was delirious with fever and one of the nurses was dressed as a clown and one as a vampire and it scared the duck out of me. I don't remember much, but my mother says I screamed and cried not to be killed before they knocked my ass out.